Hi everybody, welcome to our third video as we work through the process to launch Unified Sports Bowling. I'm Dan Masters with the NSAA. Today's topic is eligibility, one of my favorite topics as we've launched the Unified Sports programs. Before we dive into eligibility, I wanted to go back to video 1 when we learned about tribes and getting our tribe and our team set up and building that chemistry amongst the tribe. It becomes ultra important when we talk about eligibility. A big part of the tribe and the community of leadership that you are building locally at your school district includes your special education department, whom you will rely on heavily if you're an athletic director or an administrator at the high school that is starting Unified Sports. Identifying the athlete amongst your student athletes will be done locally by the professionals in your special education department. And so it's going to be imperative that they are on board and understand what's going on within the program. So I wanted to reiterate how important it is to have your tribe started before we dive into eligibility. All of our eligibility pieces can be found in the manual under the Unified Sports tab in all of our resources section on the webpage, nsaahome.org. And specifically, I'm looking at page 6 today out of the manual, and we're going to start with the athlete eligibility. So this is the student that has been identified with an intellectual disability. And it's important to note that the language that is used in our manual for determining eligibility of an athlete is Special Olympics language. It's language that is pretty much verbatim from their model that they've used successfully for many, many years. And again, you will locally determine who is an athlete and who is a partner. That determination will come locally by the school district. For an athlete, really our approach is three-pronged, and again you can find it on page 6. The first prong is a person or a student has been appropriately determined by the local professional and agency to have an intellectual disability. Most likely is shown on the IEP for that student. That's the first prong. The second prong could be the person has a cognitive delay as determined by standardized measures such as IQ. And the third prong is the one that gets a little bit more gray for people most of the time. I'll read for verbatim. Probably the most important part of it is, or the student has a closely related developmental disability, means having functional limitations in both general learning such as IQ and in adaptive skills such as recreation, work, independent living, self-direction, or self-care. However, persons whose functional limitations are based solely on physical, behavioral, or emotional disability or specific learning or sensory disability are not eligible as an athlete but may be eligible as a partner, so they can still participate. The most common example I give in this third prong is that's probably your student that has been identified as having dyslexia. They fall in that third category where that dyslexic student would be in a partner and not an athlete. Okay, so that's the athlete side of it. Students that are your partners, again, this is full inclusive. So these are students that are not identified as an athlete, a student without an intellectual disability. And the thing I'd highlight with your partners is this is where you're going to get a big return on your investment. And you're going to want to recruit the right students within your high school building to become a partner and a leader on that team. It's important for you as a coach and administrator to not solely comprise teams of students with disabilities. The whole reason and focus in forming unified sports teams by Special Olympics was so that you could have that partner and athlete relationship. So that's important to remember when you're recruiting the partners themselves. The one thing I should also note with this being a full inclusive sports program is a student with a physical disability is certainly able to participate and should participate if they like, and that student would be considered a partner in the mix. The last thing I want to note from our eligibility piece is just a reminder that the the identification of a student with an intellectual disability, that will happen locally within your school district, hopefully amongst your team that you formed locally. The NSAA will determine eligibility based on that identification that has been made locally by the school district. So it's similar to putting in an eligibility list for a basketball team, a football team, your speech roster, etc. You locally will determine who's eligible and then pass that information on to the NSAA. Thanks again for listening. Have a great day, and we hope to hear from you soon.